Welcome to Central Avenue. I'm Carol Montgomery.
And I'm Don Jacks. In this special edition of Central Avenue, we'll be focusing on the changing mission of Rocky Flats and the impact it will have on Rocky Flats employees and their families.
We'll look at the Local Impact Initiatives Task Force, a group who's developing plans to assist workers and communities affected by changes in Rocky Flats' mission.
We'll talk with EG&G Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Board, John Kucharski.
And finally, we'll feature a panel discussion with top Rocky Flats decision makers talking about the future of Rocky Flats.
We will cancel the small ICBM program. We will cease production of new warheads for our sea-based ballistic missiles. We will stop all new production of the Peacekeeper missile, and we will not purchase any more advanced cruise missiles.
With those words, President Bush all but closed the door on more than 40 years of nuclear weapons production at Rocky Flats and other sites around the country. This historic decision followed a period of unprecedented political and social change throughout the world. The fall of the Berlin Wall, the ultimate disintegration of the Communist Party, and the end of the Cold War all served to lessen our nation's reliance on a massive nuclear deterrent. Consequently, our focus now turns to the future and the ultimate fate of Rocky Flats and other weapon sites across the country.
Rocky Flats' mission is changing. We're making the transition from nuclear weapons production to a new set of different but equally important tasks. Rocky Flats' mission is now threefold. First, bring the plant into a cold standby status in case the government needs to resume plutonium component production before another facility can be completed. Second, continue the environmental restoration work that is already underway. And third, prepare for the ultimate decommissioning and decontamination of plant facilities. The plant has already made progress towards assuming these new duties. The reopening of Building 559 in February was an important milestone and will support all facets of our new mission. Environmental restoration activities are continuing, including significant progress on groundwater cleanup at the 881 hillside. And finally, a newly formed transition team is developing a plan to prepare the plant for decommissioning and decontamination operations in the future.
Our changing mission has raised concerns from workers and those who live and work around Rocky Flats. Primarily, concerns about jobs and the future of the plant site. The Rocky Flats Local Impacts Initiative Task Force was formed in June of 1991 to provide assistance to plant employees and communities affected by changes in Rocky Flats' defense mission. The task force is co-chaired by Jefferson County Commissioner Rich Ferdinandsen and Boulder City Council member DeAnne Butterfield.
As local government representatives, we're trying earnestly to engage in a positive relationship with the workers and the labor unions up there, because they are our community, and we feel that we want to be helpful in the kinds of problems that they're going to be faced with, and we want to be able to work with them to plan for our future with a change that is as profound and as large as this one is.
Because the people who work there live in our communities, we are very interested in the welfare of the workers and their families and how it relates to our community. And we wanted to provide a single focal point for all the discussions about the transition.
The task force represents nearly every stakeholder affected by the downsizing of the Rocky Flats plant, including local city and county governments, chambers of commerce, the Colorado congressional delegation, the state of Colorado, labor unions, the Department of Energy, EG&G, and others. Secretary of Energy James Watkins has committed $100,000 in DOE funding to the task force and $140,000 of additional support services during fiscal year 1992. The funding will help to begin strategic planning for the short and long-term future of workers and the community.
There's going to be questions about, do we want to continue to use that facility? How do we want to use it? Are Are there options available for other kinds of employment, industrial uses up there? Those kinds of questions that I think we just are now beginning to focus on.
If you would like more information about the Rocky Flats Local Impacts Initiative Task Force, contact Rich Ferdinandsen at 271-8505, DeAnne Butterfield at 939-0243, or Teresa Mikulski at 966-5594.
EG&G Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Board John Kucharski visited Rocky Flats and met with union representatives and plant managers on April 8th and 9th. Kucharski spoke about the plant's changing mission and fielded numerous questions from the audience. After the meeting, we had an opportunity to talk with Mr. Kucharski about EG&G and the future of Rocky Flats.
As you know, our contract runs through the end of 1993. Sometime within the next 10 to 15 months, the DOE, local DOE, I guess, will make a recommendation on whether or not the contract should be extended or recompeted. The mission change does not have to, or does not necessarily indicate that EG&G should leave the reservation. The work will move toward the ERMAC type activity. We're very familiar with it. We do an awful lot of that work today, and we're committed to do that work into the future. We are the largest employer at the Nevada test site. I believe that over the next few years, we'll probably see a reduced number of events. All indications are that we will continue to test because of needs to go ahead and verify the stockpile. But there's going to be an effect there. I'd prefer not to talk about numbers, but there certainly will be an effect there. And we all know that there's going to be a large effect at Mound. The Secretary has indicated that Mound essentially would be out of production by 1994, and the only thing that would be left at Mound would be ERMAC activity. So there will be some fairly major changes for EG&G. We admitted to one another that we both march to a different drummer, and we always will. We as management have a different perspective, but the fact of the matter is we do have a similar goal. That's to stabilize this workforce, to keep this facility going, to have it run as best it can run, and become the most efficient facility in the complex. There will be limited opportunities for salaried employees in EG&G. I have some work to do on that. As I told the managers, I will get back and begin to talk to some of our senior executives now. We always need good people. Many times we're unprepared or unwilling to spend the extra dollars to go ahead and just put people in orbit, as I call it, for a while. But we're going to try to make some jobs available. We certainly will not be able to handle all of those people that are going to leave.
Mr. Kucharski is scheduled to return to Rocky Flats later this year for another meeting with plant management.
The Department of Energy has appointed Terry Vaith, manager of the Rocky Flats office. Mr. Vaith comes to Rocky Flats from the San Francisco field office, where he was the assistant manager for defense programs. The appointment became effective on April 27th. Mr. Vaith replaces Bob Nelson, who returned to his position as deputy manager of the Nevada office after a temporary assignment at Rocky Flats.
We'll be back after this message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America.
When we return, Media Relations Manager Jeff Schwartz will host a panel discussion featuring 3 of Rocky Flats' top decision makers. The topic, the future of Rocky Flats.
Lies beget lies.
God, you sound like Mother.
Well, she happens to be right. Lying is a vicious circle, and there's no way out except to tell the truth.
It's not so easy this time, Maureen. If I tell you, it's just gonna make it bad.
1 out of every 5 people who try cocaine get hooked. But that's not your problem. Or is it?
Rocky Flats is experiencing changes unprecedented in its 40-year history. And naturally, there are questions about what lies ahead for employees and the plant. Hi, my name is Jeff Schwartz, and today we're going to try to answer some of those questions. And joining us is Bob Nelson, Deputy Manager of DOE's Nevada office, and until recently, Bob managed the Rocky Flats office and continues to work closely with the Rocky Flats team. Also here is Jim Zane, EG&G Senior Vice President and General Manager of the Rocky Flats plant. And joining us too is Gary Potter, a member of the plant's transition team and helping to prepare the transition plan you'll hear more about later. Gentlemen, why don't we begin? And Bob, why don't we begin with you? 27 months here, a few changes we've seen in that time, not only at Rocky Flats, but throughout the world. Can you help some of us make sense of what's happened in those 27 months and what it all means?
Well, over the 27 months, probably the biggest change, certainly the most unexpected change, was the decision that we won't make any more pits or triggers for nuclear explosives. That really has changed what we're going to be doing at the plant. It really hasn't changed a lot of the other things that we've been working on in terms of conduct of operations and the style of doing business. But along with that reduction of need for the weapons part, there's been a real growth in environmental programs. So somehow that will all get worked out into some long-term future for the plant.
So a couple of years ago, we could say, yeah, I know the mission of the plant. The mission's changed. Can we say what that mission is?
We have a pretty good definition of the mission right now in terms of the what I would call the gross mission. How we'll implement that mission, we still have a lot of decision making to do throughout all of the Department of Energy and all of the contractors. There are real questions as to how many people and what particular skills we'll need to carry out our mission. But we know that in a general sense, we're going to get some of our buildings at Rocky Flats able to be operated, and others we probably won't bring up to an operational status, and then we'll start a decontamination and decommissioning program and clean up site-wide. So we have some general ideas, and we're pretty certain on those, but how we're going to do them still leaves a lot in question.
Bob, somebody's going to have to get this question, and you brought up the issue, and that's employment, the size of the plant. I know that's an issue the Department of Energy is looking at countrywide.
Probably the best place to start in answering that question is with Admiral Watkins' news conference of late January or early February, where he said we would probably go from where we are now at around 8,000 people down to 4,000 to 4,500. I think as we work through that, however, we'll see more and more needs in particularly the environmental programs. And so while those are very good, pretty solid goals, how we get there really is uncertain right now.
Jim Zane, as a senior vice president with EG&G, I know the company is looking at its operations across the country, its DOE operations, and looking at some of the challenges it's facing, not only at Rocky Flats, but elsewhere. And what are some of those challenges facing EG&G right now?
Very similar to what we're facing here at Rocky Flats. Mound, of course, is going to go through a transition, much like Rocky Flats. As a matter of fact, probably a more severe transition than Rocky Flats. And they would, I would guess by 1984, or 94, I'm sorry, would be, primarily in the restoration phase. Of course, 2 contracts we have in Nevada will be impacted, we expect. Matter of fact, we know they're going to be impacted by a reduction in the weapons testing program there. And in numbers, I would expect that in Nevada, that we'll probably go down about 1,000 people, about the same as Rocky Flats. And I expect about the same number at Mound. So it's across the complex.
Now, Admiral Watkins, in January, mentioned a number that at Rocky Flats, at the plant would be, in several years, be at about a 4,500 employment level, compared to around 7,000 now. As a challenge, I know that was an estimate in January, as a challenge, how does EG&G address that kind of employment issue?
Well, the first thing to do, of course, is put some real detail into the planning, and we are now trying to prepare a transition plan. We're trying to look at not only the skills we have now, but the skills we'll need, say, next year and the year after, and put together an orderly process for reducing the size of the workforce. And we're looking at early retirement programs, other ways to do this in the kindest way that one can do it. But I think there's no question that it's going to be difficult for some people, that it can't be done painlessly.
There are some specific program areas at the plant that have received some news recently, and one in particular is stainless steel operations, non-nuclear manufacturing, if you will. And Mr. Kucharski, the CEO of EG&G, was out and said that he would try and take a look and see if there might be some ability to privatize parts of the southern half of the plant. How about the issue of non-nuclear manufacturing? What's the status of that now?
Well, he did as he said he would. He had a group of our commercial people come out, and they took a hard look at what is being done in 460. And these were people that know the aerospace market, some of the automotive markets that we serve, and basically concluded that for the long term, you might be able to develop a business for 460, but you couldn't go in and take it over with the present workforce and start from scratch. And so pretty much concluded that unless a significant part of the current work could be left in that building for some years while you developed a commercial business, that kind of a specialty business, as a matter of fact, because it's really not a production plant. It probably wasn't feasible for us to do that, and we've had some discussions with the department, and of course their desire is not to commercialize that work. So at this point, we've pretty much given up on the idea of commercializing the work that is being done in 460.
And concurrent with that look at 460, there is, of course, the ongoing work to help transition it to Kansas City, a preferred option under an environmental assessment underway. How are we doing on that? How are Rocky Flats people helping out in that area?
Well, of course, we have people on the team that, and we're working directly with the people in Kansas City, with the department, and helping us as best we can to make that an orderly process.
Gary Potter, we're going through a transition time. The plant isn't what it was, and it's not quite what it's going to be yet. So we're in the middle. We're putting together a plan to get there. What is our transition plan, and I suppose what isn't it?
Well, Jeff, the transition plan is going to be a document that we're preparing that's going to describe the activities that we need to go through to take the plant from its production-oriented mission to one of environmental restoration and decontamination and decommissioning. Right now, we're looking at all the mission components, and that includes, maintaining a production contingency, continuing the non-nuclear manufacturing, and also continuing all the waste management and environmental restoration activities, as well as taking the buildings from their current status or their current configuration down to a condition where they're ready for us to start D&D or decontamination and decommissioning work.
And I understand there's some time frames on when this plan has to be delivered.
Right. The plan itself has to be delivered to the Department of Energy by July 3rd, and that's in preparation for the department to report to Congress at the end of the month, July 31st.
Is this just another piece of paper, or is this plan, am I going to actually be able to open it up, look at it, and see, well, these buildings are needed for that, or those buildings might be needed for this?
The plan itself is going to be very detailed. It's going to specify on a building-by-building basis exactly what the phases are that it's going to go through, what it needs to be looking at, and it will essentially just be a roadmap as to take us from how we are, what we're doing right now, to where we are going to be doing in the future. And it'll be defining those endpoints.
There's kind of a more human type question. Is this hard to do?
It's very difficult. It's very complex. It's dealing with a lot of mission components. There are a lot of aspects like the human resources component, how we handle people, transition them through, deal with stakeholders off-site, the communities, all of whom are going to be affected by this. And of course, our own employees are a key essential ingredient to this. Them and their families are very important to us, and we have to make sure we go through a very orderly process, identify those people that we need, and make sure we preserve the jobs that we can and make good utilization out of the staff that we have.
Thank you, Gary. We only have a few minutes left, but in that time, I'd like to offer everybody at least one chance to draw up some ideas and lay them on the table here, and any thoughts you might want to add, because I know we've got people out there watching this, families and employees and their neighbors. Bob, we started with you in the beginning. Why don't we go right back to you? Any thoughts that you'd like to tell you people?
Sure. From my standpoint, this 27 months I've been here has been probably the most exciting period of my career, and all of the people and certainly the families who who supported them that I've dealt with have been just outstanding in working with. And I guess as I leave Rocky Flats and head back to Nevada, I would like to just leave with a thank you for all of the help, not only from the employees, but from their families who've obviously supported them well.
Any words of wisdom to those of us here?
Probably a long career still at Rocky Flats.
Thank you. Jim Zane, from the EG&G corporate position, you have a unique opportunity here to say a few words to some families that are important to you and to all of us.
That's true. I'd like to pick up on a couple of things Bob said. Of course, we have a very good workforce here, and if you look at what they've done in the past, they've been the best in the business. I would say that, as Bob says, that there is a lot of work left to be done at Rocky Flats that will span many years, and what we need to do is, there's going to be some difficulties, I think, as we go into it, but I think we need to get our spirit back, get our morale up, and be as good at the decommissioning, decontamination, and the environmental restoration work as we were at production. And that I think there's opportunities for many people yet to make a career at Rocky Flats, and not to give up hope.
Well, in many ways, you're the bottom line for a lot of things, but are we going to do it? Can we do it? Do we have the right people? Do we have the right energy?
You bet. You know, we talk a lot about retraining, and of course Gary and his plan will sort all of this out, but the work for several years is going to be in the buildings. The same risks that we've had in the past will still be there, and the same skills we've needed for dealing with those risks are going to be required. And for the majority of the work in the foreseeable future, particularly in the so-called D&D area, the workers we have are well qualified, and they know the buildings, and they're the the logical ones to do it. And I think they're going to have lots of opportunities, growth opportunities.
Thank you. And Gary Potter, you're knee-deep, at least, in transition plans to get us to the future. Anything you'd like to add at this time?
Well, I can't emphasize enough the importance of the transition effort itself when we start moving into this. This is a major undertaking by the department, very important work, and it's going to require the efforts and contributions from all of our employees.
And I make you a bet that if I went to the folks who are on the team, the transition team, and wherever they are, they're putting in a few hours these days.
They're putting in a lot of extra hours, a lot of time, and that's a sacrifice both for them and their families, and we certainly appreciate it, and frankly, it's vital.
Well, thank you, and that's all the time we have today, and hopefully we've helped to shed a little light on some of the key issues facing Rocky Flats employees. If there are questions we didn't address or you'd like additional information, please contact Employee Communications at 966-7259. And again, I'd like to thank all of you for being here today and taking some tough questions.
Well, that wraps up this special edition of Central Avenue. We hope you found the information helpful.
As you know, the situation